Thank you so much. Good afternoon. When I ran for office, I was clear on one message. Public safety is a prerequisite to our prosperity. And I threw everything at public safety and ensuring that our citizens could be safe. Probably unlike any other mayor, I spent so many days on the streets of shootings, of homicides, of victims, of individuals being shoved to our subway tracks. I've been in hospitals, funerals, speaking with parents, hearing and feeling the pain that they experience when they are the victims of any form of criminal action. And numbers don't lie. What we have done is clear. We lived up to our commitment. And I say it over and over again, we can't go backwards. We can't go back to the days of the early 80s when I was a rookie police officer, and we can't go backwards to 2021, where guns were known to be ordinary tools that were used on our streets to permit crime. Our 2025 third quarter crime data shows that our public safety system is working. We have gone to work to sweep out crime and illegal activities from our neighborhoods. And so if we were to start with the top line, because of what this team has done, not only the Commissioner and Chief LePetri, but also those who are in the front rows on our subway system and housing, our chief of the department, our entire team. We're out there doing the job every day, as well as the men and women who are doing the blue uniform and wear that shield on their chest. We have finished our 7th consecutive quarter of crime reduction, 7 consecutive quarters. And when you think about it and say it simply, since January 2024, for almost 2 straight years, crime has consistently declined each and every quarter. Major crime for the third quarter was 3.1%, equated to over 1,000 fewer victims. And that's more than 1,000 real people who were no longer the victims of serious crime. And more specifically, 6 of the 7 major crimes were also down for this quarter, including declines in homicides, robberies, felony assaults, burglaries, grand larcenies, and auto theft. Major crime in our subway system and our public housing developments were also down for the third quarter of the year. Chief of Housing and Chief of Transit, a job well done. We cannot thank you enough for what you have accomplished. And those have been areas, particularly housing, where public safety has eluded us for decades. And although you hear about some of the high-profile incidents, overall, the residents of NYCHA are safer, and the residents of our subway system, when you take out the 2 years of the COVID 2 years when no one was on the subway, you'll see how these numbers are significant. And we set records in our transit system. We had the safest summer in recorded history in our subways when you exclude the pandemic years. In the third quarter, July, August, and September, index crime was a record low in our subway system except for 20 and 21. Shooting incidents were also, once again, at record lows for the first 9 months of the year. No caveats, no asterisks, plain and simple, the lowest. Jets at record lows in our city history has continued to show that we're doing the right thing. Shooting incidents were down 29.7% for September and 15.6% for the third quarter of 2025. And for the first 9 months of the year, shooting victims were also at record lows, tying the previous record set in 2018. Shooting victims were down 32.5% for September and 11.3% for the quarter. Shootings are down at a staggering 54%. 54% when you compare New York City year-to-date shootings to the same period immediately before I took office. Those are the dividends paid for more than 4,100 illegal guns removed off our streets. 4,100 illegal guns. And the almost 24,000 guns removed since the start of our administration. And that 4,100 number was for this year alone. This is 24,000 weapons that no longer threaten the safety of our neighbors, our families, and our children. More specifically, for September, major crime was down 2.8%, which was driven by a decrease in 6 of the 7 major crime categories. That includes double-digit percentage declines in homicides, rape, and auto theft, as well as declines in robbery, felony assaults, and burglary. Retail theft, of which you are watching across the country, is taking off. And so we should think about that when individuals want to stop enforcing retail theft, what impacts the financial stability of our city. But retail theft in this city and hate crimes are both continuing their decline for month, quarter, and year to date. This reduction in crime is no accident. It's the product of our administration priority to take on crime and quality of life issues. While these numbers show real progress, we know there's more to do, and we're not resting until every New Yorker is not only safe, but feels safe in our home, in our subways, and on our sidewalks. We have been clear in this administration, we will not tolerate a feeling of anything goes in our streets, and that includes those who want to carry out quality of life conditions. We're going to ensure that we enforce them as long as I'm the mayor of this city. And we're making New York City the best place to raise children and families. And because of our steadfast focus on public safety, the deep bench of leaders we've put in place here at police headquarters and the hard work of the brave men and women of the NYPD, New York City remains the safest big city in America. And a clear indication was that we just had UNGA, UN General Assembly Week, and we had Jewish high holidays, the New Year's, and you saw the proper deployment to deal with the dignitaries who were here, as well as ensure that those who wanted to worship were able to worship in safety. We're going to continue to do the job that New Yorkers expect for us. I want to turn it over to the Commissioner, Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. It is with deep appreciation for Mayor Eric Adams and immense pride in the women and men of the NYPD that I'm here to report on some historic, record-breaking crime reductions achieved by your NYPD cops in the third quarter of this year, the months of July, August, and September, including the fewest shooting incidents for the first 9 months of any year and for any third quarter in recorded history. Tied for the fewest shooting victims ever for the year, and the second fewest by 1 for the last quarter. 7 straight quarters of declining major crime under Mayor Adams, going back to January 2024. The safest third quarter ever on our subways, with all-time low major crime numbers for each of the months of July, August, and September, excluding the COVID years. And murders equaled their second lowest level ever for both the third quarter and the year to date. So let's get into it, and let's start with shootings. In the first 9 months of this year, citywide shooting incidents are down more than 20% to their lowest levels ever, shattering the previous record low set in 2018 by 20 fewer incidents. And they are down nearly 16% for the quarter, making it the fewest shootings in any third quarter in recorded history. Shooting victims are also down 19% for this year, tied for their lowest levels ever, and they were down more than 11% last quarter, the second best third quarter in recorded history. We always hear about how shootings spike in the summer months, but your NYPD cops did not just slow that trend, they reversed it. Shooting incidents fell by double digits in 4 out of our 5 boroughs last quarter, led by a 26% reduction in the Bronx, a 20% reduction on Staten Island, a nearly 19% drop in Manhattan, and an almost 18% reduction in Queens. In Brooklyn, shootings were up less than 3% for the third quarter, which represents 2 more shooting incidents in that borough from a year ago, but it is still the second best quarter for Brooklyn shootings in recorded history. And to be very clear, over the past 9 months, Brooklyn has seen the lowest number of shootings ever recorded. For the year, the decline in shooting incidents is led by Staten Island at more than 38%, Manhattan at over 34%, followed by Queens at 22%, the Bronx at 20%, and Brooklyn at more than 12%. And this is not a coincidence. It is the direct result of an unprecedented, precise, data-driven deployment of thousands of officers. We took cops out of desk jobs and put them on high visibility footposts where and when they were needed most. And we told them to get the guns and to go after the gangs. And they did that in unprecedented fashion. I encourage all New Yorkers to join me in expressing their deep appreciation for the men and women of the NYPD for their noble, selfless, and historic work this summer. The centerpiece of our strategy over the last quarter has been our summer zones. Up to 2,300 cops were sent to work in 72 summer zones across nearly 60 communities last May, the largest deployment of its kind in NYPD history. But this strategy wasn't just about size. It was about planned precision, and it worked. Over the past 19 weeks in our summer zones, shooting incidents fell more than 47% during deployment, with shooting victims down 44%. This includes a 77% reduction in Manhattan North, a 46% reduction in Brooklyn North, and a 40% reduction in shootings in the Bronx. I want to be clear. The communities where we're seeing the deepest reductions in violent crime are the same communities that have historically been plagued by the most gun violence. We saw crime reductions in every single borough during deployment, with overall crime in our summer zones down more than 18%, felony assaults down 25%, robberies down 23%, murders down 18%, auto theft down 15%, grand larceny down 12%, and burglary down nearly 1%. This is what happens when we're not only working hard, but we are working smart. We know that this zone plan is effective, and we know why. It is a data-driven, scalpel approach to fighting crime and disorder. That strategy is going to continue into the fall, and you'll hear more about the summer zones from the architect of that strategy, Chief LaPetri, in a moment. Now let me give you the overall crime picture. For both the third quarter and year-to-date, major crime is down in our precincts, on our subways, and in our housing developments. For the year-to-date, overall crime is down about 4% citywide and fell more than 3% last quarter, making this the seventh straight quarter of declining crime under Mayor Adams, going back to January of last year. And for the month of September, major crime was lower in every one of our 8 patrol boroughs. Of note, we had significant crime reductions in Queens of nearly 7.5% for the quarter and more than 9% for the year, and Manhattan down more than 5% for the quarter and over 4% for the year. And in the past 3 months, we reversed an upward trend that we were seeing in the Bronx, going from a 6.2% crime increase in the second quarter to a 3.4% decrease in the third quarter. And given that the past 3 months are historically when our city sees the most crime and violence of any time during the year, I want to commend all of the Bronx cops who refused to accept the narrative that their borough was an outlier when it came to public safety. Where they did see stubborn pockets of crime, they executed our plan to address it. Looking at the 7 major crime categories, citywide murders are down nearly 18% for both the year and for the quarter, bringing them to their second lowest level ever for both timeframes. And these aren't just percentages, they are lives saved. So far this year, there have been 52 fewer people killed in New York City compared to 2024. Burglaries in the third quarter were down to their second lowest level in recorded history, dropping more than 9%, and they are down nearly 4% for the year. Citywide robberies are down nearly 10% year to date and more than 5% for the quarter. That means 1,200 fewer incidents than in 2024, reversing an upward trend that we saw through the first 9 months of last year. Grand larcenies fell by more than 4% for the year and were down 0.5% for the quarter, extending the declines we've seen in this crime for the last 3 years in a row. We're seeing similar multi-year declines in auto theft, where after a significant increase during and immediately after the pandemic, we are now down by more than 4% for both the year and the third quarter. Felony assault, a crime that is mainly driven by domestic violence and attacks on our officers, is about 1% lower for the year and down nearly 4% for the quarter. And back in July, when we presented the second quarter crime stats, we said that rape was the one index crime that had increased up 21% through June. And we explained that the rise was largely due to a change in state law that went into effect in September 2024, which rightfully broadened the legal definition of rape to better capture the full range of these crimes. Now that we're past the 1-year mark of that change, we finally have a clear year-over-year comparison, and the numbers do show progress. For September of this year compared to last, rape was down more than 13%, and this is the first time in over 12 months that we are looking at the same universe of survivors. And the tide is also turning on our subways. Outside of the COVID years, we just had the safest third quarter ever in transit, with major crime falling by nearly 14%. Each of the past 3 individual months, July, August, and September, was the safest in recorded history for major crime. And year to date, crime in our subways is down more than 4% to its lowest levels in 15 years, excluding the pandemic years. For this year, robberies in transit are down to their lowest levels ever, and shooting incidents are down a remarkable 67%. Overall, crime in our subways is nearly 12% below pre-pandemic levels, with robbery down more than 24% and felony theft down nearly 27%. These results don't just make the transit system safer, they make people feel safer too. A recent poll conducted by the MTA showed that nearly 7 out of 10 New York City subway riders felt safe while using the system, an increase of 12% from the beginning of this year. Why? Because people are seeing more cops on the trains and on the platforms where we know that the vast majority of transit crime occurs. The sentiment is shifting, and it's not just about a visible police presence. Over the past 10 years, the transit rules against taking up multiple seats, laying outstretched, smoking, drinking alcohol, etc., were not consistently enforced. This increased the perception of an unsafe system, and it needed to change. So this year we made that change. Our cops will no longer walk by someone who is violating the law and disrupting other passengers. They will correct the condition. And I want to be clear. This is about restoring a sense of safety and order in the system. It is also a response to New Yorkers telling us that unchecked disorder makes them feel less safe on the trains. That's why we're also matching our enforcement with services. Through the Mayor's PATH program launched last year, the NYPD has partnered with city agencies, local nurses, clinicians, service providers, and others to provide services such as shelter, meals, medical care, and mental health support. This is how we deliver a safer, more accessible system for all. Looking ahead, I want to highlight an issue that has taken on increased importance in neighborhoods across our city, and that is retail theft. The numbers here are encouraging. In the third quarter, retail theft dropped by nearly 19% citywide, bringing us 13% lower for the year compared to 2024. And this didn't happen by accident. It is a true indicator of what an effective, comprehensive crime-fighting plan can really do. For too long, shoplifting was a leading sign of disorder and lawlessness on our streets, to the point where everyday goods behind lock and key has become the norm. Since most retail theft is classified as a misdemeanor, though, it wasn't given the same attention as more serious violent crimes were. But tell that to the small businesses who were constantly victimized by thieves. Tell that to the local shop owners who were unable to make their rent and forced to close in the face of crushing shoplifting losses. It's devastating to them, and it hurts our communities, and the NYPD has said no more through a multifaceted, precise, data-driven approach. This year, every precinct in the city has designed and implemented a retail theft plan, which puts officers on footposts in high-propensity locations during the specific hours when most retail theft occurs. And we began seriously investigating these crimes as well, establishing patterns, identifying recidivists, tracking perps, and closing cases. This includes closer coordination between patrol cops, squad detectives, and transit officers, since we know many shoplifters attempt to flee into our subways. Finally, retail theft became a focal point of our weekly CompStat meetings, where local commanders provide our executive staff with regular updates on what's working and discuss solutions to what isn't. The results are clear. Our officers made nearly 6,600 shoplifting arrests last quarter alone, a 30% increase from pre-pandemic levels, and nearly 21,300 arrests citywide so far this year, which is 40% more than in 2019. So it is no wonder that in 2025, retail theft is down in 4 of our 5 boroughs. This work restores order in our neighborhoods. It restores the confidence of our local businesses, and it sends a direct, unambiguous message. Shoplifters, regardless of the amount they steal, will be investigated, identified, and arrested because accountability matters here. In a moment, our Chief of Crime Control Strategies, Mike LaPetri, will break down these numbers even further, but I want to take this opportunity to thank the women and men of the NYPD. Every piece of data we're presenting today is a reflection of their work. When we talk about record-setting crime reductions, we're talking about the cops. These gains have been achieved on their backs. Long, hot nights of grueling footposts, risking their own lives to get guns off the street, and an uncommon instinct to run toward the danger when everyone else runs away. These results are also a reflection of the steady leadership and forward-leaning strategies developed by our chiefs. Among them, of course, our Chief of Department, John Schell, our Chief of Crime Control Strategies, Mike LaPetri, our Chief of Patrol, Phil Rivera, our Chief of Transit, Joe Galata, our Chief of Housing, Charles McAvoy, and our Chief of Detectives, Joe Kenny. New Yorkers should know that they are served by the most extraordinarily talented group of police leaders that I have seen in my 18-year career. No one does it better, and it is truly the greatest privilege of my lifetime to lead them. And of course, none of this would be possible without the leadership of Mayor Adams, who has made public safety the bedrock of his long service to this city. Under his watch, we have invested in the tools of tomorrow, from drones that expand our reach to new facilities like the 40 Station House and the brand new 116 precinct that strengthen our foundation. He has given us the people we need, setting us on a pace this year to hire more officers than at any time in the past 40 years. He has quite literally backed the blue. His vision has turned promises into progress, and his partnership has made New York safer, stronger, and more secure. And all these results are a testament to his leadership. So that was some very good news, but now I have to comment on some profoundly bad news. The federal government's decision to slash counterterrorism funding for the NYPD from $90 million down to nearly $10 million is a betrayal of this city. I want to be very direct about this. If these cuts go through as planned, it will represent a devastating blow to our counterterrorism and intelligence programs in New York City. The impact of these cuts won't be felt immediately. New York City will not be a less safe place tomorrow as a result of all of this, but it will absolutely be a less safe place 6 months from now. Let me be clear. These funds are the backbone of the NYPD's counterterrorism programs. They pay for our highly trained bomb squad technicians, our officers with heavy weapons who guard our subways and major events, the critical response teams who do counterterrorism patrols at our houses of worship and other sensitive locations, our radiation detection capabilities, the intelligence analysts who uncover plots before they become attacks, our camera systems that enable us to monitor conditions in real time, and the training that prepares us for active shooter attacks. Counterterrorism funding cannot be a political issue. It cannot rise and fall based on partisan whims. To strip this funding away from the #1 terrorist target in the world is a profound mistake. The cold, hard truth is that since 9/11, New York City has faced more than 70 terrorism plots and ideologically driven acts of violence. And with the support of these critical resources, the women and men of the NYPD have kept our city safe. Cutting these resources now in a time of global conflict and surging threats puts lives at risk and will make our city meaningfully less safe. To be blunt, this is the difference between a city that prevents the next attack and a city left exposed to it. And I will not stop pressing this issue until the federal government restores the funding and ensures that we continue to have the resources that we need to keep you all safe. Now I will turn it over to our Chief of Crime Control Strategies, Mike LaPetri.
Good afternoon. So as the Commissioner said, I'm going to speak specifically about the Summer Violence Plan of 2025, which started on May 5th and it ended on September 14th. We identified 72 summer zones across the city for targeted deployment at specific times. 40 precincts, 10 transit districts, and 8 public service areas. The zones were based off of historical data, high volume, violent street crime prone locations. We used historical intelligence and data analytics to determine deployment, with, of course, relentless follow-up and precision. Collaborative policing and investigations between all units in the department, our Gun Violence Suppression Division, our Narcotics Division, our Vice Division, our Neighborhood Safety Teams, our Intelligence Bureau, Housing Bureau, Transit Bureau, Patrol, Detective Squads throughout the city. Summer violent zones saw an overall decrease of 18% less index crimes as compared to last year. Every borough is down in index crimes since inception on May 5th. The transit system within the summer violence zones had efforts focused system-wide, which translated to a 14% decrease in index crimes. Furthermore, our summer violence zones within our Housing Bureau also achieved significant reductions in index crimes to the tune of 17% decrease. While on the topic of housing, year to date, we have seen the lowest number of murders in housing history. For the third quarter, second lowest number of murders in housing history. Year to date, third lowest year for robberies in housing history. And for the quarter, lowest number of robberies in housing history. I like to talk about the Special Times Square Zone. Why am I speaking of that? The crossroads of the world, with hundreds of thousands of people going into that area every day. The zone covers from 6th Avenue to 9th Avenue, from 4-0 to 5-1, saw a 41% reduction in overall crime. That's 33% robbery decrease and a 34% decrease in felony assaults in Times Square. Robberies within the zones down 23%. Felony assaults down 25%. I like to touch on the shootings citywide between that time frame, May 5th to 9/14. Citywide shooting incidents overall, lowest in CompStat history. Citywide shooting victims, lowest in CompStat history. Citywide murders, second lowest in CompStat history. Let's talk about housing again. Murders, 12, lowest in CompStat history. Shooting incidents, lowest in CompStat history. Shooting victims, lowest in CompStat history. This city saw 400 less shooting victims from the year prior to Mayor Adams' administration in 2021. Think about that. 708 shooting incidents in a approximately 4-month period. That's what the city is in target right now for the whole year. That is just phenomenal. And that's hard work, and that's the men and women doing it. Let's talk about the individual summer zone shooting stats. 47% decrease, as the commissioner said, overall in the summer zones. Upper Manhattan, down 79% in shooting in zones. The Washington Heights zone in the 3-4, 0 shootings. The Central Harlem zone in the 3-2, 0 shootings. The Bronx, down 40% in shootings in the zones. Morrisania in the 4-4, 0 shootings for 4.5 months in that zone. East Tremont, 4-8, 0 shootings in that zone for 4.5 months. Let's go over to Brooklyn North, 46% decrease in shootings in those zones. Crown Heights, 7-7, that zone down 83% shootings. They took 1 shooting. Brownsville, Brooklyn, the 7-3, that zone down 56% in shootings. Cops were deployed at the right locations. 31% of all the gun arrests in the summer were within the zones. Over 350 guns recovered in those zones. And I'm going to tell you stories because they're really good. Example number 1. In a 90-minute span on July 9th into July 10th in Mott Haven in the 4-0, we take 2 shots fired incidents and we take 3 separate arrests of teenagers with guns. The first incident at 23:15 on July 9th, there's a confirmed shots fired in the Mott Haven houses. Within a month, the 4-0 detective squad solved that case, and that individual has been charged and indicted for attempted murder in CPW 2. As I said in the beginning, We've asked all our bureaus to do something different in the zone, and they did. Approximately an hour later, an 18-year-old male arrested with a gun in the Mitchell houses. 2 minutes later, we get another confirmed shots fired. But guess what? The deployment was out there. 5 minutes later, 2 separate gun arrests, a 17-year-old and a 17-year-old. Why is this even more significant? Because over the past 2 weeks in this city, 25% of our shooting victims have been under the age of 18. That's why it's more significant. Example number 2, 3 live gun arrests in the 4-0 and the 4-4 zones within about 2 hours. And remember, these are our field training officers that are grabbing these guns. On 9/8, at 0029 hours, FTU personnel observe an individual drinking an open container of alcohol, found to be in possession of a firearm. About a half hour later, our FTU officers observe an individual riding a city bike recklessly, found to be in possession of a firearm. And at about 3:30 in the morning, as the commissioner said, still out there, 3:30 in the morning, in front of a problematic club in the 4-4, grab a guy with a pistol. With 2 tragic incidents in the Bronx on April 23rd and September 1st, where we've had multiple people shot. The response by the units that were deployed to those zones yielded 4 individuals arrested for the first incident, with 4 guns recovered. And for the second incident, same thing. 4 individuals running from that scene with 4 guns recovered. And I like to just compare the Bronx overall, since I gave the Bronx a lot of credit, as they should get credit, because they have the most zones and they have the most cops, but the cops are out there and the detectives are out there doing the work. So let's compare that to 2021, before the Adams administration took over. The Bronx has seen 203 less shooting victims for the year. That's lives saved. I just want to thank again all the men and women and my partners to the right of me for everything. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Current budget impasse, or does it predate that?
It is not part of the current budget impasse. It's completely separate. We became aware of the funding totals this week, and this is part of the Department of Homeland Security administers Homeland Security grant programs, and this is our UASI grant and our Homeland Security grant program funding that has been decimated.
So we did do it last summer. We just did not do it with as many cops, with as many zones. It is not just cops on foot. Right? In the beginning, I spoke about all the different NYPD units that we asked to do something different. We prioritized. We used precision. Our detective bureau, our transit officers, our housing officers, multiple detective bureau units, narcotics. We wanted them focused in these zones, and obviously it speaks for itself, the success.
No, these are really focused on our counterterrorism programs. No, just to be clear, these cuts are devastating, or would be devastating if they go through to our counterterrorism programs as opposed to our crime-fighting abilities.
Yeah, and I think the commissioner properly articulated how important it is that we have the funding to do our terrorist operation. You know, New York City is still a real target for those who want to hurt our city. We're seeing extremist behavior that's taking place across the entire globe, and these funds are crucial, not only because of, you know, the United Nations is here. We have the largest Jewish population outside of Israel that's here, and so many other groups that are the victims of some of the targets. And so to be able to be proactive and reactive is crucial. And so we cannot make it any clearer, and I think the commissioner did an excellent job of pointing out the substantial amount of money that would get in the way of doing the job that we do. We are the number one target for many people who want to harm our city. Yes. How are you? Yes.
Is there anything taken into consideration in the future that you will plan to do to ensure that it will stay this way or get better?
Yeah, listen, I'm leaving this city in good shape. I mean, what more can you say? The city is more jobs in the city's history. Our children are outpacing the state in reading and math. We built more housing. We've zoned the city to build 426,000 units of housing. We made the city safer, both above ground, below ground. You don't see encampments along our highways and streets like you see in other cities. This city is in good shape, and we need to make sure we don't go backwards. And I'm going to say you in the words of Bloomberg, when I became mayor, don't fuck it up.
You caught that?
Right.
But I'm wondering, how confident are you that your successor, whomever it is, will be able to carry on this legacy and maybe even build on it?
I'm not. To do what we have done around housing, around public safety, around business, around bringing in business here, to do that, you have to really have the ability to ignore the noise. And it comes with a price tag. And I can't say I am extremely optimistic about what is going to happen. When you talk about removing 3,000 dangerous inmates off of Rikers Island and putting them back in the communities that we took them out of, when you talk about disbanding SRG, when you talk about telling police officers not to respond to domestic violence incidents, when you want to take away the gang database and not collaborate with the takedowns of gangs, which had a lot to do with our safety, taking down gangs of almost, I think, 40 to 50% of our shootings are gangs. We don't understand how imperative it is to focus on guns, get them off the street. If that is not your plan, then, you know, it's problematic. And I am not confident that New Yorkers are going to continue this success that we have witnessed, because when you talk about safety, you have to be very clear and you have to be very focused. And I don't see that clarity. Idealism collides with realism when it talks about going after dangerous and bad people. There are people who want to hurt our residents and who want to hurt our city. And if you don't have a welcome mat for businesses so that we have employment, if you're not willing to sit down with billionaires who pay 50% of our taxes, those who are million plus, when you talk about taxing white communities, all of these things are hurting what it takes to have a successful city. We didn't stumble into success. We had a well-focused plan. And then you have to be ready for emergencies. No one expected 237,000 migrants and asylum seekers to come to the city. You don't even talk about it anymore. You know, it has become so good for you guys that you don't even realize it. But you know what? You're going to miss me. Thank you.